What is up, alpha males? Gird your loins for another episode of Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man, the right way, made in the very image of God, strong, dominant, in control, and we don't apologize for it. Today we're going to be talking about urban alpha male skills. Hopefully that intrigues you. I'm going to put in the bio. If you want to skip around 2 minutes. We'll get into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor, and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years. Also NRA certified and some other 3-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. I want to say that all that God has gotten me through, to God be the glory. I don't think I got through any of those situations that I'm still breathing because I'm so good or so special, but because God loves me and had a purpose for me and delivered me from those things, not because I'm better than any of the men that didn't make it. And I am thankful that God continues to use me. And because of that, I hope to use that training and experience to help and to serve you. Urban alpha male skills. Often on this we talk about all kinds of stuff, wilderness survival, and I like that stuff, and we'll probably talk about it again in the future, God willing. But this hopefully is more germane and useful to more men. Just kind of the point, right? The first one, very practical, especially this time of year, is, let's call it beyond the very basics of vehicle maintenance. I think as a man you should be able to change a tire. If not, then start there. But when you change a tire under suboptimal conditions, instead of just the jack that comes with your car, or your truck, do you have a better jack? You have a piece of wood that you can use if you have to change a tire on a soft piece of ground, because likely the jack that came with your car is not going to work on dirt or on a soft piece of ground if you need it. Also, basic maintenance to get you somewhere so you don't have to pay for a tow or something's not going to cost an arm and a leg. Basic, like how to fix a hose. Just probably beyond what you would consider the very basics, like changing a tire, changing your oil. Like if a hose cracks, a lot of times it cracks at the very end. Do you know to trim that off and put another hose clamp? Hopefully you have a hose clamp and fix that hose. Another one real basic urban alpha male skill is the use of basic power tools. Now hopefully you know how to use an array of tools. But I think sadly a lot of young men don't, and it's not their fault. It's that a lot of young men growing up don't have a strong alpha male figure to show them this stuff. Like if we consider the basics, and you might think this is laughable, but you didn't know this either, right? You didn't pop out of your mom's womb knowing this stuff, the difference between a flat head and a Phillips head. right? Nobody knows that when they're born. You were taught that. And if somebody else doesn't know that, that doesn't make you any better than them. That just means you were given the opportunity to know that, and they haven't been exposed to that. So that's one of the marks of being alpha male. Help them, or learn yourself so you can help somebody else later. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? You know, if you know this, help somebody, and if you don't know, learn it and then teach somebody. It'll help you retain it better. Pretty cool how God designed it like that. But basic power tools, right? A power drill, which again may seem super basic, but it's one thing to just drill a hole through a piece of wood. It's another thing to know if you need it precise to start with a very small drill bit or even a nail and make a pilot hole and then start with your regular drill bit so that you don't drill in the wrong spot. The difference between basic saw blades, like let's take a real common saw, a circular saw, right? You know the difference between a crosscut blade, a ripping blade, a blade for plywood. Do you know the difference? A real handy, if you're going to start with like any power tools, probably a power drill and then a sawzall. If you're real creative, you know, with basic hand tools and a drill and a sawzall, you can get a lot done. But a sawzall comes with all kinds of bits. You know the difference between a metal bit and all the different wood bits. Knowing how to actually do it. Like, it's one thing to cut a piece of wood in half. It's another thing to know to maybe slow down or grab that loose end of the wood when you're getting close to the end so you don't splinter the end of it. And kind of why I think this belongs today, even if you live in an apartment, even if you live in a people hive. Which I've lived in cities before too, right? I was LAPD, I was a commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. I get it. Even in those environments, there are times when it is a lot cheaper, a lot handier to be able to make your own stuff. And I think one of the good things about men is we can create stuff with our hands. I'm not saying it has to be power tools, but I think an alpha male in any environment, but especially an urban environment, should have some kind of grasp of basic power tools. Now, let me be clear and straight up with you guys, you men. I'm not trying to tell you how to pick up chicks. Right? To be honest, I grew up not a Christian, and I came to be a Christian in my mid-20s. I grew up having a very skewed idea of what a man should be, and that a alpha male or a manly man should sleep with a bunch of women and use them as objects and use them for your own gratification and just go from one to the next, which is what culture and society is going to tell you is going to make you happy. I'm here to tell you that from somebody that's been down that road and honestly been with more women than I could remember. You may front for your buddies, you may act like it's all cool and that you're scoring points, but I know and you know that you go down that road and it leaves you lonely and depressed, and you're trading long-term happiness and peace for short-term lust and pleasure, and it's not a good trade. It's lonely to be alone. I've been there. I was chased for quite a long time after I became a Christian. You know what's lonelier than being alone? Laying next to a woman that does not care about you or love you. That is even more lonely. Ask me how I know. So, I am not for casual dating. That's garbage. What I am for is finding a woman that you love and respect and court her. And in general, treat a woman well. I don't care how much women say about this new age garbage stuff. You should not treat a woman like you treat a man. Learn basic etiquette for women as a man. Men and women are different. Newsflash, shocker in 2024. They are different and you should treat them differently. Like holding the door open for a woman. Like asking a woman in a non-creepy way, not quid pro quo, but just sincerely, do you need help with that? Whatever that is, carrying a heavy thing. Because you're stronger, right? You should be. You're a man. You should be stronger. Offering to use that strength, not for your own all the time, but to help others. Again, not a quid pro quo, just, can I help you with this? When I met my wife, I think our second date, I helped her with flooring in her second story apartment. The flooring was super heavy and I helped her. It was her second date. I helped carry that flooring up the stairs. And again, not a quid pro quo. Because I was stronger and she needed help. Could she have done it on her own? I guess she could have, but why? I could carry twice as much or twice as fast. Now, also, I want to, and this is very nuanced, and I'm painting this with a broad brush here, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You should be willing to help somebody else without wanting anything in return. No quid pro quo. That's a beta male thing. Quid pro quo. If you're the kind of weaselly, weak man that does something for a woman to get something out of it in return, no. You should do, and this is more than just for women, but especially for women, if you're a young man, you should do something out of love and not for love. If you do something out of love, you automatically win. If you do something for love and you don't get the love, then you are resentful and angry and hurt. Also, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. It is good and honorable to suffer if you need to suffer to help somebody else, or to give some of yourself to help somebody else, some of your time, some of your labor, some of your resources even, with expecting nothing in return. I don't think it's good or healthy to suffer for somebody else's entertainment because they are using you. That's different. And one lesson I learned as a single man, even if you really, how do I put this succinctly? If a woman doesn't love you, doesn't want you, you can't make her love you by how much you love her. You can pour out and pour out and pour out, and if she's just using you and doesn't care about you, it's not like she's just suddenly going to start caring about you unless she has some, literal Christian conversion. Realizes, and then hopefully the honest thing she'll do is stop using you. But you get what I'm saying. Woman's not into you, doesn't want to be with you, doesn't care about you, and she's just using you, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You wouldn't want somebody to do that to anybody, including you. So don't be a doormat. Again, it's okay and noble to suffer for somebody expecting nothing in return. It's not okay to suffer for somebody else's entertainment because they're a sadist, a masochist, a psychopath, a sociopath, whatever label you want to put on it. It's not okay. And it's not okay for somebody to do that to you either. Perhaps that should be its own podcast. If any of these subtopics you think I should expound on and dive deeper into, let me know, and maybe we'll do a whole episode on that. Here's another one, and this one is a big one in our culture and society today, and it gets even me. Social media consumption. It's everywhere. I got rid of Facebook, didn't have Instagram, didn't have any of that stuff. I got it back for the job. I really, this week actually thought several times and went to go delete my Instagram. I've got whatever, thousands of followers, I don't care. I was going to delete it, but every once in a while, I get somebody reaching out to me from the podcast, and it's actually a really good, meaningful interaction. That said, it's a freaking minefield. I've come to do now is when I first of all, I hide Instagram, so it's not on my home screen, because you go to post something on Instagram, and then before you know it, you spent 5 minutes on Instagram wasting your life away. Talk about being used. You're being used by a corporation. But anyway, we'll generally post stuff on there, hopefully to help people out and for the podcast, Bible verses. But what I've come to do is hide it on the home screen so I don't just see it and click on it. I have to intentionally go in and look for it, generally to post something. And then when I see my, whatever the little icon is for messages, I literally put my thumb over the left side of the phone, because I know that the vast majority of those are going to be scantily clad women. A bunch of garbage, pseudo-sexual content that I don't want. I'm a happily married man. I don't want that. So what I've come to do is put my hand or my thumb on the left side of the screen, and you can usually tell. It's got a bunch of emojis or whatever, so you don't see pictures that you probably shouldn't be seeing. Just delete those. And then you can usually read a bit of it and tell if it's actually somebody reaching out to you for help or garbage. Or even worse than that, sinful garbage. Now, I do have Facebook, because I have Facebook Messenger, and that's a way that I interact with the patrons. The patrons, we interact, except for Sabbath, I take a break, but on a daily basis, right? We're interacting with each other. We're iron sharpening iron, hopefully. Hopefully that's a good, healthy Christian place for men to come together. So that said, I have Facebook, so I have Facebook Messenger, but I almost never get on Facebook unless it's like to add somebody to the group. That being said, I can see how it's alluring. I just touched on don't let yourself be used by somebody who doesn't care about you. Don't let yourself be used by social media that doesn't care about you either. And this is Alpha Male Podcast, but if there is a woman listening, especially a young woman listening, I know it's supposedly the cool hip thing today in our culture for men to see you as a sexual object. It's supposed to be liberating or whatever for you to use yourself like that, but you are being used. If you're putting yourself out there as a sexual object, don't be surprised when you get used as one and discarded as one. And that's sad, but I'm just trying to be real with you. And it doesn't make it okay for men to do it, but if that's what you're putting out there that you are, then don't be surprised if that's how men see you. And it doesn't make it okay for them to use you, but think about the image you're putting out there. If the main thing you're putting out there is sexual or pseudo-sexual or provocative images of yourself, the main thing you're putting out, then why would you be surprised if that's the main thing that men are wanting you for? And shouldn't you, and getting back to loving your neighbor as yourself if you're a woman, shouldn't you want a man to want you for more than that? And that's for the culture as a whole, not unique to social media. Talking to the women now, stop wearing yoga pants to the gym and doing hip thrusters. That's not helping anybody. But it's everywhere in social media. It's everywhere. It's bombarding you, and it's hard to get away from. There is a time and a place for fasting. There's a time and a place for fasting actual food. There's a time and a place for fasting certain things. If you know that it has become a pit of quicksand for you, then don't go near it. And that's probably easier than using it sparingly. It's even harder to use it sparingly. It's, I think, engineered to be addictive. Here's one useful, especially if you're a man with a similar temperament to me. Anger management, violence management. And again, I think culture has this wrong because I think they've been trying to blur the lines between men and women for a long time, trying to make women more masculine. Oh, you can do anything a man can do just as good. We're different. It's okay to be different. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. Likewise, I think they've been, how can I put this? Friendly to all listeners. Don't be a sopping, wet pansy. Violence is not bad. Anger is not bad. For it is written, be angry and do not sin. Anger can be good. Anger can help you. Likewise, violence. Violence can be good. It can help you. Likewise, it can be evil. Both of them. They're not malum in se. Anger and violence are not bad. And you as a man should possess both those qualities. And you should wield them. You should wield them at the proper time and have the discipline to keep them sheathed when it is not proper. The right way. Like I said, I didn't grow up a Christian in regards to women. I grew up fighting a lot. I don't know if you call it like the southern redneck culture. I would fight at the drop of a hat. I would look for reasons to fight. I would beat up people I didn't like, and when I was really angry, sometimes I just beat up my friends because I was a punk. I'm a different man now. When it says born again, I mean born again. If any of you had met me in school, you may not have liked me. I was I was a bully. I was a punk. I don't think I would like me from back then. Again, I was not a Christian. And I don't know that I put the pieces together at the time, but one of my early mentors, because I didn't have really any strong male Christian mentors up into high school. But then when I started playing sports and got into ROTC, one of, maybe the only, sadly, strong alpha male Christian mentors I have was Master Gunnery Sergeant Floyd Gladden. I don't think that man has any idea the impact he had in my life. And he was a strong alpha male. He was also a Christian. Maybe the first time I was exposed to a strong Christian man. And part of our learning was the 14 leadership traits. And to tell you how big an impact this was, that was well over 20 years ago. And not only do I still remember all 14 leadership traits, I remember their definitions verbatim. Like I can quote them to you. I've done a podcast on the 14 leadership traits if you want to go listen. But I remember one day, I think he really took a liking to me and kind of put me under his wing, which I really needed. And he said, Milito, not word for word, but he said, Milito, you need to work on your tact. And he was right. I was the kind of leader that you're going to do what I say because I said, and if you don't, I'm going to make you. Now, there is absolutely a time and a place for that. There's absolutely a wrong way to do that as well. Sometimes you need to explain yourself and use some tact. Even if you make somebody do what you say and they don't understand why, that's less beneficial. And that's kind of taking the lazy, easy man's way out. Just because I'm stronger or I can beat you up and I can make you, doesn't make it always the right way. Sometimes that is the right way. When I was a cop, like if somebody was going to throw down, I was going to throw down. Again, it's not about being a coward. Being a coward, cowardly is sin. Being a coward is sin. I'm not talking about being a coward. I'm just talking about using and wielding power the right way at the right time, having the meekness, having your power under control at the right time, and controlling your emotions. This is a little side tangent, but we see a lot of these transgender people trying to be something they're never going to be, trying to be the opposite sex. And we see a lot of them busting out in massive degrees of violence. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm just pontificating here, but be circumspect and reason with me together, men. When you were an adolescent, when you were a teenager, you were dealing with all kinds of massive dumps of adrenaline and testosterone. And that was the natural amount. Imagine being shoved and pumped full of those chemicals. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine not having stronger Christian or strong male mentors to put you in line when you got out of line? I wonder if that's one of the reasons we see so much violence. Well, another one is probably depression because they're trying to live a lie. But part of that might be those massive amounts of chemicals, testosterone, adrenaline, which are not bad in themselves, but you got to know how to use them. You got to know how to control them. So this is absolutely an alpha male urban skill because there's a lot more people in urban, suburban environments. And if you're like me, people can really, really tick you off. There is a time and a place to punch somebody in the face, and I'll still do it if I need to. But more often than not, there is absolutely a time and a place that you really want to punch somebody in the face, but you don't. You control it. I'm going to give you a couple of little scenarios here of how violence or anger are not always bad. Okay, so, and this sadly is stuff that happens. Let's say you live in an apartment complex, right? This is an urban episode. You live in an apartment complex. You know the lady that lives next to you lives alone. Lived there for a year or who knows how long, and she's the only one that ever comes and goes. 3 o'clock in the morning, you hear somebody beating on her door. She comes to the door. He rushes in. In this first scenario, let's be friendly to everybody here as far as language they can hear. He uses that person without their consent and then kills them. That is evil. Scenario number 2, you hear that, you're courageous, you hear that woman scream for help, that makes you angry, you go in there and you kill that man before he can kill her, because it's very clear when you go in there, he has a weapon or whatever, that he's going to kill that woman. And you kill him. Same action. A human life was taken both times. Once it was evil, once it was righteous. Do you understand that the violence is not what's evil? It's the context in which it's used that it's evil. I think sadly a lot of men are either on one or the other sides of this. A lot of men sadly have been lied to, and there's a garbage thing in many schools and public education today where if you get in a fight for any reason, you get in trouble and you get whatever. Right? What if it's righteous? Right? What if the best thing to do at that time was violence? And sometimes that's okay. And I think a lot of this righteous anger and aggression has been totally beaten out of men and they've been shamed into thinking it's always wrong when it's not, and you get a bunch of cowards. Or you get the opposite end. I worked some of the nastiest streets in LA, in the country probably by that measure, and you get all these young men that use violence at any time for any reason unjustified, as a means of gain for money, as a means of controlling other people. Both of those are wrong. It's wrong to be a coward. Look in the Bible. Some of the first people it mentions as being in hell are cowardly. Don't be a coward. Also, there are very clear and defined parameters for when you can use violence. When it's righteous, when it's loving. And if you're in that first group, you might be thinking, how can violence be loving and righteous? Well, you may have listened to the bio, you may have skipped through it. I do a whole other podcast called Gunfighter Life. I've been a professional gunfighter by God's grace most of my adult life. He has blessed me with the talents and abilities to do that. If I'm, let's say, going out to see a movie with my wife, and an active shooter breaks in there and starts killing people, bam, person dead. Bam, person injured. Bam, person dead. I have the skills and abilities to stop that person, but I sit there like a sopping, wet pansy and suck my thumb and think, you know what, I don't want to be violent. I don't even want to be angry. I'm just going to let this, I'm just going to do nothing because I'm a sopping, wet pansy. Is that loving? I would submit in that scenario where that active shooter is taking human life one right after another, the most loving thing that I can do in that scenario is change his behavior as fast as possible, as violently as possible, because it will preserve human life, and that is loving. Totally loving for me to use a massive amount of force against another human being and even take their life, right? What does the Bible say? If a man sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. But you have to control your anger. Likewise, so what I'm saying is both extremes can be wrong, and an alpha male should one have violence, possess the ability to be dangerous, to be violent. And we've been so castrated in this culture, not individually, but as a whole, to think that being dangerous and being violent is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Then we go back to that apartment scenario. You rush in and that guy's got a knife raised up and he's about to plunge it into that woman's chest. Do you want a soft, gentle, non-violent, non-angry man busting through the door at that time? Or do you want a man that's dangerous and violent to bust through that door? Which one of those is going to be most beneficial to that lady? And just because this culture and society has made it the norm for men to be passive and castrated and paint violence is always a bad thing, that doesn't give you a free pass to be a coward. If you look at when Moses sent the spies in to spy out the promised land, 12 spies were sent. Most of them were cowards. Only Joshua and Caleb were truthful and courageous. Those were the only two permitted into the promised land. The cowards were not. Because the majority of men are cowardly doesn't give you a free pass to be cowardly. And simultaneously, culture and society will glorify violence when it's not necessary, when it's not justified. And again, both extremes are wrong. They're a perversion of what a real alpha male should be, which is dangerous, possessing the ability for violence, but having it under control and wielding it with authority, controlling it and not letting it control you, and only using it if it's the loving, righteous thing to do. And maybe if you want that to be its own episode, let me know, because I feel like I could go a lot deeper into that. But there's a lot in there. And I will kind of wrap up with this. How do you know what's righteous? How do you know what's right and what's wrong? And how do you be a warrior, be an alpha male, but use it at the right time? Well, thankfully, God loves us so much, He gave us an instruction manual, the Bible. especially if you're looking for justified and unjustified use of force up to and including deadly force. There's a whole instructions on that. Read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, right? The Torah, the Pentateuch, whatever you want to call it. God's instruction manual for, well, many things that involve being an alpha male, but use of force is definitely in there. No tactical tip of the day, because it seems like this was a lot of kind of tactical tips, but I will close out with a tactical verse of the day. From Exodus chapter 22, if a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 ox for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If a thief is found breaking in, and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. If the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He shall make full restitution. If he has nothing, he shall be sold for his theft. My comments: if a man breaks into my or your domicile, your dwelling, your house, your apartment, whatever, in the middle of the night, and you're there, and you have no idea what he's there for, but he's not supposed to be there, it's not lawful for him to be there, if you kill said man, that's righteous. If he takes your TV and you hunt him down the next day and kill him, not righteous. Now, he should still restore the whatever he took, but not a threat to you at that time. He hasn't committed one of the things deserving of death, then you don't kill him. You don't hunt him down and kill him. If he's breaking in, you don't know why he's there, and he is a danger to you at that time, right? If a reasonable and prudent person in your same situation would believe that their life was in danger, if a thief is caught breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Again, that's Exodus 22. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.